Family, I have decided that as Zimbabwean people, we need to try and send a message to the South Africans because it seems like while we have been neighbors, we, the Zimbabwean people, have been so much interested in what has been happening in South Africa. We've said this many, many times. Remember when we were even at school in the 80s, and towards the beginning of the 90s, we used to know quite extensively about the situation in South Africa, the apartheid and things that were happening there, and how the organizations that were fighting against the white race, the white government oppression, the ANC, Umkhonto weSizwe, and so on, and how they were also housed around the countries that are in Southern Africa, countries like Mozambique, Tanzania, Zambia, Zimbabwe. The frontline states, that Zandile does not know of. So it seems like we are the people that were more advanced in understanding the situation South Africans have been going through. But unfortunately, South Africans, I think, never really got interested in really finding out what happens in other countries. I don't know what really is the causing factor why South Africans have not been interested in the affairs happening in Mozambique, affairs of Zimbabwe, affairs of Zambia. Because when you ask them about our politics, the history of our politics and so on, they don't know nothing. And yet we knew everything about South Africa. I don't know why. I think this is the reason why South Africans still get confused, because we are looking at the situation of Job Sikhala right now. And the situation of Job Sikhala, it seems like there are some South Africans that are believing this thing that has happened of Job Sikhala's arrest in South Africa. And they don't even have, they are blank in terms of the history of Job Sikhala, where Job Sikhala comes from, what has been happening, how many times Job Sikhala has been arrested in Zimbabwe and not found with, guilty in not even one count. So because of that kind of, I don't know what word I could use. Probably I'll just use indifference or ignorance, probably. It makes it difficult now to try and make them understand what we know when we say that the arrest of Job Sikhala is ZANU-PF all over it, right? So I think I wanted us to make this show a message to the South Africans. This must be a message to the South Africans so that they would understand. And also from Kwena, they also need to understand the radio stations, the journalists in South Africa, news channels in South Africa, and South Africans ordinarily. We need you to understand where we are coming from. So I decided to do this show so that we could give an outline of Emmerson Mnangagwa, who he is, and the kind of person that he is, what he has done in the history of our country. So this is why I've entitled this message, Tracking Victims of Mnangagwa'S Cooked Up Stories that affecting Job Sikhala today. What is happening to Job Sikhala in your country, in South Africa, is not new, especially the cooked up stories by Emmerson Mnangagwa. And I've decided to pick up a few examples of people that had cooked up stories by Emmerson Mnangagwa, so that you could understand who this man is. And it will be very easy for you to understand that why do we say Job Sikhala is innocent, and that whole story is null and void. We have a man called Josiah Magamatongo-Gara, who happened to be the commander of the Zanla forces, and he was in Mozambique during the time of the Lancaster House Conference, where there were discussions that happened between the warring parties, the Smith government and the warring parties, Zanla and Zwipra. This man, as the leader of the military wing of ZANU-PF, wanted Joshua Nkomo to become the candidate for the elections, when now free and fair elections were supposed to be held in 1980 in Zimbabwe. And the fallout with Emerson Mnangagwa and Robert Mugabe, these two being allies who understood each other greatly. So Josiah Tongogara maintained that Joshua Nkomo was actually the father of the Liberation War, of which it is the truth. Joshua Nkomo is actually, or was actually, the father of the Liberation War. He is the father of the Black consciousness movement in Zimbabwe. And he's the man who deserved to be voted for in the elections in 1980. But Emerson Mnangagwa, in conjunction with Robert Mugabe, they played games and made sure that the men who had power to pressurize and have Nkomo being the one who is voted on the ballot paper, Josiah Magama Tongogara, he gets killed. And on the screen there is the man that you are seeing smiling on the top left hand corner. That man died in a mysterious accident on his way to Zimbabwe, towards already the independence of the country. And a funny accident happened, and then that was it. That's how he died. Right. So stories have come up, different stories of lies that have been created to try and cushion Emerson Mnangagwa and Mugabe from the shenanigans, from the whole setup that they put in place there on the death of this man. So we need people to understand. We know of a woman called Joyce Mujuru who once became vice president of Zimbabwe. The very same Emerson Mnangagwa cooked up stories again about Joyce Mujuru, convinced Robert Mugabe that this woman wanted to take over his power. This woman was visiting Sangomas to try and kill Robert Mugabe, and she was killing black chickens and sprinkling blood and so on. A lot of funny stories, just because he wanted this woman to be eliminated, so he gets an opportunity of rising up the ranks of ZANU-PF. And he succeeded in cooking up those stories, and it happened. I could tell you more and more and more people. The current vice president, who is General Constantino Chiwenga, has been betrayed again by this man. He is the man who was the commander of the armed forces that led the removal of Robert Mugabe in 2017. And they agreed that Emerson Mnangagwa was supposed to come only for one term, and after that one term, he hands over power to the next person. And now Emerson Mnangagwa has turned against him. He's now making him a liar. He's now becoming very clever. And this is how this man has operated. And these are things that we need people of South Africa to understand when we talk about this. 23 years ago, Emerson Mnangagwa was the Minister of Security in Zimbabwe. And him and Mugabe, they engaged a man called Ari Ben Menashe. He was an Israeli citizen. And they created a lie using this man, Ari Ben Menashe, to lure Morgan Tsvangirai into a Mugabe assassination plot. Menashe organized a meeting in the United Kingdom, which he claims that him and Morgan Tsvangirai agreed in that conspiracy to eliminate Robert Mugabe. Tsvangirai was then arrested in Zimbabwe and was charged with treason and was later acquitted. But after a draining and a rigorous trial, which took place in 2004, this Ari Ben Menashe is the guy that you are seeing there in the bottom right corner. He is a guy that was created as a lie by Emerson Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF. There are many things. I'm just giving you a tip of the iceberg. There are many things that this man has created, non-existent things. Menashe presented a grainy video, which the state claimed was the evidence against Morgan Tsvangirai during that time. And yet on the video, nobody could really see who was in that meeting. But he claimed that that was Morgan Tsvangirai. And we want to thank God, because those times, our judiciary in Zimbabwe was not as bastardized as it is today, because today Emerson Mnangagwa controls the judiciary in Zimbabwe 100%. Any political judgment that is given, whether it is in the magistrate court or in the high court in Zimbabwe, it is a direct instruction that comes from Emerson Mnangagwa. So people must understand this, and we want South Africans to get to understand this, so that when we say that be careful of this story of Job Sikhala, you'd understand what we are talking about. This very same Emmerson Mnangagwa in the early 80s in Zimbabwe, specifically 1982, February, he convened a press conference in Bulawayo after conveniently discovering an arms cache, which he claimed belonged to Joshua Nkomo and the Zebra. And this led to a terror and a genocide in Zimbabwe, which is known as the Gukura Hundi, where more than 20,000 ethnic Ndebele people were killed under Emmerson Mnangagwa and Mugabe. And Joshua Nkomo had to flee the country to the United Kingdom. He left the country wearing a dress, a woman's dress and a woman's wig, to survive the roadblocks that were hunting the father of all liberation in Zimbabwe. After he had been turned into a villain, after he had been turned into a criminal by this very Emmerson Mnangagwa, who is the friend of Cyril Ramaphosa, the friend of Fikile Mbalula, the friend of the ANC. We want South Africans to understand this. In 1990, Reverend Ndabaningi Stole, who led his own party, which was called ZANU Ndonga, and this very Reverend Ndabaningi Stole is the man who is just next to, on the right side of the man I started to talk about, who is in the top corner, the top left corner, the man who is just on the right side. This man was actually the founder of ZANU, what we call ZANU today. This is the man who was the founder of ZANU. But if you hear what happened because of Emmerson Mnangagwa to Reverend Ndabaningi Stole, you would be so shocked. He was approached by two men who claimed they were Renamo operatives from Mozambique and were looking to forge a working relationship with Ndabaningi Stole. They had a meeting which one John Mhlanga was also videotaping. Fortunately, Ndabaningi Stole did not come to the meeting. But 7 years later, Reverend Ndabaningi Stole was on trial for treason. And one of the chief witnesses was John Mhlanga, whose real name was Leslie Gwindi, a CIO operative and a ZANU-PF functionary who later became Harare City spokesperson and was one of those people who destroyed Dynamo's football club in Harare in Zimbabwe. These sting operations were done and directed by Emmerson Mnangagwa. So we are giving some of these things so that people like Vanasofi Mukwena can get to understand what we are talking about today when we say that this man called Emmerson Mnangagwa is a man not to trust. Let him be trusted and cushioned by the ANC, but we pray and we wish that other political parties, other political leaders, and ordinary South Africans can understand who this man is. This whole thing about Job Sikhala having ammunition or whatever explosive in his car, that is not a new story to us as the people of Zimbabwe. I've just given you just these few people. I did not even talk about Morgan Tsvangirai. I did not even talk about Kabila and the DRC war, what that was. I did not talk about the diamonds that were stolen in Chiadzo, which amounted to 15 billion, and that money disappeared. 15 billion United States dollars disappeared at the hand of Emmerson Mnangagwa and some of these people that are surrounding him today. We are talking about these things so that we can try and educate a few of the our other SADC citizens who may want to understand what really happens in Zimbabwe. Do you know, South African people, that the sting operation of the CIO, the Central Intelligence Organization, a ruthless, murderous organization that was formed by Emmerson Mnangagwa when he started to become Minister of State Security soon after independence, he just uprooted it right from this Smith government of the whites, which was oppressive and authoritarianism. He just took it as it was and implemented it. And today, that very CIO, do you know that they do have offices that are operating in Cape Town? Do you know that they have offices in Durban? Do you know that they have offices in Pretoria? and they have offices in Johannesburg, and they are operating, doing sting operations, disappearing Zimbabweans, killing Zimbabweans, murdering Zimbabweans, and following some Zimbabwean nationals in your own country, and the ANC is aware of it. Do you know that, South Africans? Do you know that some of the people that were mentioned and involved in the killings that are involving people like Kate Matlala and all these Mutunus and so on, all this scandal that is being exposed by the General Mkwanans, they are also part and parcel of this sting operation that is connected to Emmerson Mnangagwa and the Kate Matlalas of our own country, Zimbabwe, who are people like Kudakwashita Gurei and Wikine Ushivayo. You have heard General Mkwanans mentioning these names, Zimbabweans that are involved in extrajudicial and political killings that are happening in South Africa that also involved cartels and drug groupings. We are trying to make South Africans who want to understand the truth first, to know the situation first before they can begin to judge other Zimbabweans or Job Sikhala. So this man has succeeded many times in creating cooked up stories that would bury many people. In ZANU-PF as a party itself, beginning from 1980, there were many people that were killed in ZANU-PF. Ministers, top officials of government who had misunderstandings and disagreements with Emmerson Mnangagwa and Robert Mugabe. He was the man who was behind the killings. If you ask Zimbabweans about the Pumas, these lorries of the military that killed a lot of people through accidents in Zimbabwe, this was the man behind it. And I wish that our South African brothers and sisters would get to know the truth about what we are talking about. We are not even talking about what happened during the time of COVID. During the time of COVID, this man took advantage of the COVID sickness, and he eliminated all generals, more than 9 of them, who died in a space of time which is less than 6 months. And these people dying during COVID, and all of them were diagnosed of COVID by doctors that were specifically working for Emmerson Mnangagwa. And their families were threatened and silenced. Some who discovered that there was foul play. All these are people, generals who were involved in the military coup in 2017 that removed Robert Mugabe. So this man knew what he wanted to do in Zimbabwe. He knew that if he would want to say he wants to extend his term, like he has said, and like what they've passed already in their ZANU-PF conference, which happened last month, he wants to get rid of the constitutional clause that says 2 terms for a president. He wants to go on and on and on until he hands over this country into the hands of his children as an empire and a monarch. He knew that if he would start that move, when those generals who led the removal of Mugabe, they were going to remove him the same way they removed Mugabe. So he wanted to disarm the military and all those generals. And right now, as we speak, very few are remaining who were part and parcel of the move that happened in 2017. This is a man who is a killer. He kills without thinking. And we are trying to help you to understand when we say that Job Sikhala, this is a cooked up story. I know that these stories may not be very common to you in South Africa because your situation totally is not exactly as our situation in Zimbabwe. Our politics is dirty in Zimbabwe. Dirty. It's dirty. It's rogue. It's crooked. It's evil. It's ugly. It's murderous. And I wish that South African people would know this, so that you'd understand that Job Sikhala is just one of the victims, like all other victims. I could add even ×2 numbers of faces that you are seeing on the screen right now of people that have issues and cases and disturbing stories that are involving this man called Emmerson Mnangagwa. I think I have shared what I had to share, and I wish that our citizens, fellow citizens of Southern Africa, you'd take this as a brief historical event of a man that we are calling president in our country today, so that you'd understand why their influence in Tanzania has caused the situation we see today in Tanzania. I wish you'd open your eyes and understand, hear it from us. We are coming from the country that is the architect of all the corruption, all the election rigging, all the authoritarian rule that we are beginning to see happening in many of these countries in Southern Africa. So we have the best experience. We have seen it all. We, the Zimbabwean people, we can tell you a story and a half. We have seen it all. And we wish you would know, and we wish you would understand the truth of our story. This is the Zimbabwean story. Hans Nagogo's story, it is very evil and desperately wicked. Thank you so much. Choi says, like the video, please. Sister Esan's accidents, short illnesses, long illnesses, what a disgrace. Yes. My sister Doka says this thing will seriously backfire whilst they think they are nailing job. Yes, we are praying that it backfires, and it's likely going to get there. Shame. Indeed, things are really very, very bad. And sister Essie, after this whole expose, people will ask why we celebrated on November 17, 2017. Indeed, people are just seeing that that was yet another big problem. And Manashe akamboimpiwa namadzore pakaipa. Yes, yes. Ari Ben Manashe, he was just one of those imposters of ZANU-PF. And the devil, master of deception, is like a twisting serpent. He can deceive the masses and make them believe the lies. I saw a podcaster from DRC, I think, praising Zimbabwean government for donating drugs to Botswana, right? So they don't know them. Schools are not teaching true African history. Yeah. Because these liberation parties are twisting information. And even more so, before independence, South Africa was like home, and we respected each other when we were still when we were still rich. Yes, a poor man is hated by even his own brothers. That's what even the Bible says. So poverty is bad. Yeah, right. Poverty is bad. Nobody loves you. Nobody likes you when you are poor. But very soon Zimbabwe is going to be rich, and Zimbabweans are going to be rich. And you are going to be surprised how the integrity of the Zimbabweans is going to change. The way they look at us is going to change very, very soon, because there are things that are happening and there are shifts that are taking place. And there is also a God in heaven. So, family, thank you so much for joining me. And I say to the SADC citizens, I hope I've given you a gist of the whole story, but it is just a tip of the iceberg. Thank you so much. We'll meet in the upcoming show. Shalom.